What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Bet Central podcast, episode 81. And quite honestly, I don't even know how this episode's going to go. It's another episode where no graphics, no going game by game. We'll dissect certain moments from some of these games, but really, this is more just again a group therapy session, which is becoming the norm, unfortunately, on this program. I don't know how many irrational things I said in the post game show between today, yesterday, or whenever else. But all I know is that you'll get a slightly more rational version of me tonight. Uh, you'll get Matt's thoughts on where this team stands right now. Before we jump in everything, though, I ask that you please leave a like on your way in, or if you're watching our replay, subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. We appreciate you guys getting us to 500 subscribers actually right as the show started here. So thank you everyone for that. Hopefully we can get to 1,000. That is the next milestone, so we can start to bring you some additional content. Because once you get 1,000, you get the memberships, and then we could work from there. Some members only streams and stuff like that. So we really do appreciate it. And then turn on your notifications as well, so you know when we upload or go live. I'm gonna let Matt do the honors of jumping in with his thoughts first, because you guys have heard me, like I said, between the post games this entire series. You guys have not heard from Matt, so the floor is yours to open this.
I mean, I'm feeling good as of right now. There's nothing really. Team's not really bothering me too much because I know they're playing bad baseball and like, okay, sure, it's not ideal right now, but I'm not gonna let this team, affect me, you know, mentally in a bad way because I know they're playing bad. I'm like, and again, it's like for me, after they lost the game today, I wasn't mad. I mean, I was in the car. I was listening on the radio. So when I heard that, Diaz got walked off to end the game, and they got swept in this series. They lose 11 out of 12 now, 7 straight losses. I mean, just playing bad baseball. I mean, it's just really all it is. And it's like, to me, I'm not mad either because I had no expectation going into the series. I said they were gonna get swept, so why why get mad over something that I expected? And listen, it sucks that this is where we're at with this team right now because I think both of us, when we were going into this series, and there was so much, well, not into this series, but into the season, there was so much excitement, and we didn't think that we'd be in this spot currently. I mean, in the span within 2 months, these two huge losing streaks after just, and the unfortunate thing is it's two long losing streaks after two really good win streaks, which is like, uh, I don't know. Like I'm kind of like at a loss for words right now. Good thing there's an off day tomorrow because I don't want to watch this team play tomorrow. I kind of need a little bit of extended break. I mean, listen, like I'll watch the games, but at this point, and people can say whatever they want. They could say, I'm a fake fan. I don't care really. To me, I watch the games, but I'm completely mentally checked out in terms of actual feelings. I'll watch the games, I'll break them down, I'll take mental notes, I'll see what's truly happening. But me sitting here watching these games and overreacting to every single little pitch, to me, and listen, other people are different, and how you want to be fans. That's up to you, and I completely respect it. But to me, I just can't get completely worked up over a team that is just playing, some of the worst baseball. Imagining, I mean, this is as bad as the stretch late in the season in 2021. This is as bad as the stretch that we saw in 2023, and even some of the years like 2017 Mets, 2018 Mets. I mean, even some of the earlier versions of the Wilpon Mets, where it was 2012, 2013, 2011 teams like that, and it's just the only thing I'll say though, and I, I'm shocked and I'm not shocked in a way. I am really shocked that no one has lost their job so far, especially when it's two bad stretches within 3 months. To me, at least, you would think that someone would be held accountable. And look, this is something that me and you have both spoken about many times on this podcast, especially when we've been covering this team over the last 2 months per se. Listen, and this goes back to hitting coach too with Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes. Even if they get fired, I don't think anything's going to change throughout the season. I pretty much think that this team is like, you can't do anything right now to change this team. This is going to go to September, October. If they make the playoffs, if they don't make the playoffs, whether they get eliminated in the wild card, I don't think you can change anything this team with regardless. I think it's too late. Whatever this team is now, they are who they are. And like I said, to me, firing someone is not about making a so-called change for the better. It's just holding someone accountable. And to me, like I just don't know how someone hasn't been fired already. But that's just me. But like I said before, I switch it back to Evan. Thank you guys for 500 subscribers. We always appreciate your guys' support here on Mets Central, even though we're going through a bit of a tough time now with how the Mets are playing. But we're still here. We're still giving you guys content. We're still giving you guys analysis. We're still giving you guys our thoughts and opinions, and we want to keep doing this. So yeah, hopefully the goal. I mean, small steps. Hopefully next 750, then work our way for 1,000, and then we go from there. And we keep building. We keep building because that's what we want to do with our lives. We want to create careers in sports media and sports content. So the more you guys support us, and the more you guys just keep watching us, smashing these likes, commenting, sharing us stuff, the more we appreciate it. And hopefully for us, we get to a point where maybe this becomes our job. Later on in life, where we actually get paid to do this, which to me at least, because I went to college and I want to go get a degree to pursue this and do this job as a full-time career. So but yeah, small little steps, but we're getting there slowly but surely, and it's majority of it's thanks to you guys.
Yeah, 1000%. Everything that Matt said on that part. And yeah, we really do appreciate you guys. And it sucks that honestly, the tailspin might have been the propeller of us getting to 500 subs. So it's like a win lose in that regard because believe me, with the Rangers channel too, I noticed that the sub count goes up and up when you got more bad to say, it feels like at certain points. But in terms of just this series, it just kind of felt like last series was more of the anger, as you mentioned, where now it's like it's kind of more numb. Like I was numb when they got walked off. Obviously, when I come to these post games, I get more mad than when I'm watching the games. But when these games were unfolding, nothing that occurred through these games came to a surprise. I mean, I said it in the post game from today's game when they went up 5-0. I had the full expectation that they were losing the game, and that should not be the case for a team that, like I keep repeating time and time again, I hate that I keep repeating it. They were 20 games above 500 at one point, and this is where we are. That I'm expecting them to find a way to lose. Where last year, and it's just insane how things have changed this much. Where last year down the stretch, they were finding ways to win. This year, they're finding ways to lose. And the biggest problem that I've been pointing to as well is the fact where this isn't just something where you could point to it being, you know, just a this year's problem. Because if this was just a this year's problem, I would sit here and be like, okay, well, last year they had a slow start. This year they had a hot start and then they tailspin. But I'm willing to give them some. Obviously, this is still unacceptable, but I would be able to give a little more leeway to a degree. But the fact that this is just the track record with this group of guys, and by this group, I mean specifically the McNeils, the Lindors, the Alonsos, the Nemos, and now you add Soto into that mix. But with those four in particular, those guys have been here through those years where this team has started they've either started slow, they've either started hot and then, tailspin off like we saw in 21 and 22. 23 put themselves behind the 8 ball. 24 they did the same, but they ended up catching up. But now this is year 5 of those guys, and it's kind of just alarming to me how none of those guys in particular seem to be taking this thing by the horn and leading by example out there and saying, we can't let this happen again. Like, we have done this too many times, and it's quite frankly unacceptable. And there are things we're going to talk about with the hitting philosophy because We've talked about it at nauseum, and there's more to talk about there as there's a Twitter thread that I want to read through at some point during the show. But the biggest problem is this is the fifth year where it's not just like I've mentioned on the post game shows. It's not 2, even 3 weeks of bad baseball, which happens in a 162 game season. Every single team goes through struggles at some point in baseball. But the problem is, it is long stretches with this group where they are just losing games and they are dragging and going through the motions for 2, 3 months at a time. And to me, that's where it's unacceptable more than anything. And they could very well, it's August. They could very well find the rhythm in September that we don't know about. They could very well get into the dance and find some rhythm that we don't know about. Who the hell knows? But for the time being, I can't sit here and one convince myself it's going to happen other than, living in fairy tale land. And number two, if this goes the way that I expect it to at this rate, which is either missing the playoffs or being wild card exits, it's time to look at this group seriously and make some sort of huge change. Whether it's August, so I don't want to be talking about this now, but and this might be a conversation to go deeper into another time. But whether it's letting Alonso walk, whether it's letting go of Brandon Nimmo in a trade, to me, it's going to have to come down to something along those lines if this is the trend that this season goes in, because you cannot forget about the hitting coaches who need to go. Forget about the manager who I think isn't on the hot seat, but I think his seat's at least warm going into next year. Not that the season's over, but again, if the season goes the way I expected, next season I think his seat's at least warm, if that's the case. You have to change something with the guys that have been here for 5 years now, or together for 5 years as a group.
Yeah, listen, it sucks that we would have to have this discussion in the first place, considering, and as Andrew said, yes, we need a culture changing move because, and I was about to bring this up. It sucks, that we have to talk about this, considering that we just dealt with this exact same thing with the hockey team that we root for, and that team did have a chance to actually change around their so-called leadership group, and instead they decided not to do that, and instead, basically run it back as they always decide to do, because again, with that franchise, it's always about friendships instead of championships. And we don't want that mentality carrying over here. I mean, look, kind of with me, and I know it sucks to say this, mentally, I'm kind of already in off-season mode. Like, I can't lie. I don't think this team has what it takes to win it. I don't think they're going to win it. Maybe they make the playoffs. Okay, sure. Good luck. Good for you. Even if they get in, whether it be the wild card or somehow the Phillies collapse and the Mets manage to win some games and they win the division, whatever each way they do decide to, whatever which way they do get into the playoffs, I don't think they're doing anything. I don't think they have it. I've seen enough evidence over the past 4 months of the season where the starting pitchers not giving you any sort of length as of right now, and this has been a trend since Senga went down hurt. He's came back, but he hasn't given you length. Clay Holmes, ever since hitting the halfway point, he's hit that barrier where he hasn't been able to go beyond 5 innings. Manaea has came back, has shown some glimpses, but again, sort of like the same problems with the other starting pitchers, hits a wall. And even with the other guys too. I mean, because as we talked about it, David Peterson right now is the only current guy that's giving you any sort of length, or he's constantly going 6 innings, and he gives you the seventh inning, once occasionally here and there. But then it's like when he has a bad start, like what we saw against the Guardians, and he only gives you like 5, or he gets to the 6th inning, but he can't complete it. It's like, shit. What do we do? And then we see the reaction that has the effect it has on the bullpen, because we've seen Tyler Rogers hasn't been as sharp, Ryan Helsley hasn't been as sharp, and and so on and goes forth. And even with Edwin Diaz, I mean, what's it called? today with Diaz, this was his first run given up since June 2nd. And it's a costly one, but again, this is what happens when these guys get overworked, continuing. But again, what does that correlate because of? Because the offense has been once again, like we've been talking about throughout this whole year, they haven't been able to come together with runs and score position. And like we've talked about, guys individually, they've had good seasons. Lindor, I know he hasn't been great since his pinky toes got hurt, but beginning of the year, he was giving you very good numbers. Similar to what we saw, last year coming down the stretch. Nemo has been hot and cold. He's had cold stretches. He's had hot stretches. So I don't really know what to make of his season. Pete Alonso had that really good start, was carrying this offense for a majority of the time, but he's severely cooled off. I know he's, one away from, taking the Mets all-time home run record, which I guess congratulations to him on tying Darryl Strawberry. And then, Juan Soto, respectively, he's probably had the best season out of all of them. But then still, when you look at the runs and score position numbers, they leave you very much underwhelming. So with this whole core thing, this whole Fat Four thing, listen, I don't know if to me, I don't know if they're good enough to win a championship. I severely don't. I think in terms of talent, I think they're good enough. Mentality, though, I have my questions. And listen, it's all well and good to have talent. At the end of the day, talent is one of the most important things in terms of, being a good team and getting close to that championship mark. But to me, if you don't have the mentality, if you don't have the mental strength to get over that hump, you're never going to get over that hump. So, like you said, you don't want to go too much to offseason moves, but in a hypothetical world, let's say we want to talk about the situation where the Mets do want to, break up their so-called Fat Four. Well, 2 out of the 4 guys you're locked into. You're not getting rid of them. In Juan Soto, who just signed to a 15-year deal, and Francisco Lindor, who I believe has 6 years left on his 10-year deal, 6 years left
Those
on a
guys
10-year
aren't
deal.
going anywhere.
Yeah, those guys aren't going anywhere. Brandon Nimmo, you could have the discussion, you could have the conversations. I don't know which teams are gonna be willing to take on $20 million with, because I believe he has 6 more years left on his deal as well. So theoretically, you could move him. It's going to be tough. Pete Alonso is the one that that you could really look forward to, because he's gonna be opting out of his deal, and there's obviously going to be discussion that's going to have to be made in terms of whether you want to bring him back, sign him to any long-term deal, or another short-term deal like what they did last offseason. So it's going to be interesting. And then obviously with the coaches, I mean, we've talked about it. We want Barnes, we want Chavez to go. Obviously, that's not down to us. That's down to David Stearns. And I know there's been quotes here and there, and we both don't necessarily like those quotes. They kind of do concern me to a point. Like I said, even if they don't get fired this year, because I know if they get fired, nothing's going to change. It's already too late in the season. To me, though, it gets to a point where if they're back next year, I love David Stearns, but there might have to be some uncomfortable conversations needed to be had in that department, because, like we talked about it, 4 years of evidence. If those 2 guys were to be back, I don't know how you would rationally come to that conclusion of saying, yeah, we feel fine with bringing those 2 guys back, because you just look at the offensive approach, you look at the offensive numbers, you look at the advanced metrics. Every single one of those numbers will tell you that this offense is severely underwhelming. And again, considering the fact that, going to the season, the offense was supposed to be the strength of this team.
They're paid to be that way.
Yeah, they're paid to be like that. And considering when you look at the pitching staff, and I know the pitching staff was excellent earlier in the year, but, and naturally we said there was going to be some sort of decline. Now, I think the decline has been a little more sharper than we initially thought. But we said, okay, when that inevitable pitching decline happens, those guys have to step up, and still hasn't happened. They're still not hitting with runners scoring position. I mean, sure, occasionally they had the game where they put up 10 runs or 11, 12 runs or 6 runs. And even today they put up 5 runs, but what does it mean? Because it doesn't carry over into the next game, not even into a long stretch. These offensive sparks and performances, they don't even carry. I mean, they barely carry over from inning to inning, because, again, we've talked about this before, where you look at individual games and the Mets will have one big inning where they put up, 4, 3, 5 runs. But then what does the offense do for the rest of the game? Absolutely nothing. And then you leave it to the pitcher where, and you brought this up on many post game shows that you've done, but it seems like the pitchers, they're just mentally fractured to a point because they know they have to go out there every single time and be pitch perfect. They can't make mistakes. And that's where we see these guys, they leave a pitch over the middle, they end up, giving up a couple home runs here or there, or they end up having a bad inning, like what we saw in Senga in the first game, like what we saw with David Peterson in the finale of this Guardian series, or what we saw with Shaw Mania both in the Guardian series and then in the finale today. So it's just a constant trend and a constant pattern that we've seen. And then look, and then the other big one is Carlos Mendoza. And now look, do I think Carlos Mendoza is at fault for every single thing that has gone wrong for this team? I do not. Obviously, he doesn't control the hitting. He doesn't control the pitching. That's more for the hitting coaches and the pitching coaches respectively. But it's just, again, with the quotes in the media, with it seems like how he handles certain things, and again with the bullpen decisions, because again, second game of the series, another costly decision. Why are you bringing in Ryan Stanek into a close game when there's been multiple examples and multiple things to show you that Ryan Stanek cannot be trusted in big games or in close game spots, and he continues to bring Stanek in these close games, and then it ends up backfiring, and then the whole cycle repeats over and over again. So listen, to me, would it be unfair to fire Mendoza? I think yes or no. I think somewhere in there was a good manager. I think it's like what you said, though. I think this might be a case where I think for a team with big expectations, I don't know if he can exactly handle those, quote unquote expectations and, really, and then you look at the micromanaging stuff and how he, makes certain lineups where he decides to bat certain guys with, certain bullpen decisions, what he makes, whether it's, bringing in the wrong guy or leaving in a starter for a couple batters, too long, whether it's one or two batters, just, I don't know with Mendoza. I do have my concerns though with him. I don't know if he's the long term answer for being a manager and whether he's going to be the manager to bring a World Series back to Queens. But and again with Mendoza, I think it's just more if they were to fire him. I think that's just more of a message being sent to the players and to the core of saying, okay, because I think we all know that Mendoza is a well liked guy in that clubhouse. And listen, I like Mendoza in terms of his personality. I think he's a good guy. He's got a good heart. He's trying to do what's best for the team. But at the end of the day, I think some sort of message has to be sent to these players where it's like, okay, you know, we got rid of a guy that you like. Show us something in return, because sometimes that's how you have to handle these situations. Sometimes that's how you have to motivate these players. Say, listen, we're taking away something from you because you guys fucked up. And sometimes that's how you have to be. Listen, sometimes people don't like assholes. Well, you know what? In a results business like professional sports, sometimes you have to be the asshole in a situation to get the best out of people. And that's just how it is. And if they don't like it, if they don't, respond to it well, as we've seen what happens with the Rangers when they don't respond well to things being taken away from them, then we know it's a mentality issue. But I think you have to try certain things with this group in order to try to get them respond in some way. And the way they respond, that's how we'll know whether they're good enough or they're not good enough, or whether, mentally they have what it takes to take that next step to be a competitive team. Because right now they're just completely lost from front to back.
Yeah, I can't blame you just for the initial point you made there. I can't blame you for being in the off-season mode, honestly, because right now this team would have a date with the Dodgers in the first round, and I could tell you right now, I have no confidence that they would beat the Dodgers at all. And if not, they're playing the Phillies. And could anyone sit here and say they'd beat the Phillies when they're going to have Zach Wheeler, uh, Christopher Sanchez, and I mean, they might not even need a third star at that point. Ranger Suarez go out there when this team can't hit lefties. Like, could anyone sit here and say that this team's going to even win a wild card series right now? I cannot convince myself on that. And if the Brewers fall, you might play them, and you just got ragdolled by them. So I can't sit here and sell myself on this team going anywhere either, which is why, there is this part of me that's already kind of in that mode that you're in. Now, in terms of if I'm going to play devil's advocate for why you can maybe try to continue with these four group of, or these top four players, the Fab Four, whatever you want to call them. Number one, you saw what they did with JD Martinez and a different hitting philosophy. And we're talking about getting rid of a guy that they like, which I don't know if they like Chavez or not. It seems like it might be a divide in that clubhouse, to be honest with you. Or it just might seem like it depends on the day, because one day we're hearing Lindor's telling him the coach, and then we're seeing them earlier in the season like talk about defending him and, wearing Chavez branded pancake shirts, whatever it was that they wrote in the clubhouse. I don't know. Either way, though, you could at the very least maybe say, okay, give them a better hitting philosophy, and maybe that would change it. And then the other reason is there is holes, and it shouldn't fall. You shouldn't have to rely on the secondary offense all the time, but there are holes with this offense from the secondary firepower they're relying on, because David Stearns inherited this, but like the fact that Starling Marte, who has 2 home runs since June, is being relied upon to be what he was in his prime is just, you're not going to win baseball games that way. You're just not. And you're relying way too much on these young guys to fill the margins that are not filling in the margins the way that guys like Iglesias did last year, that guys like Winker did down the stretch last year. You're just not getting that. And even Tyrone Taylor, who was good in the second half of last year, you're just not getting that to where you could maybe say, okay, a new hitting philosophy, some secondary offense, new secondary offense, maybe. But then there's also the side of it where I'm sitting here and saying, again, do they have it upstairs mentally? But there is a very big concern with the hitting philosophy. And I'll dive into the tweet a little bit here that I was referring to earlier. This is from Mets Analytics on Twitter. And I'm not going to read the entire thing because this is like an entire book. If you want to check it out, go to Twitter, go to their account, give them a follow. They deserve it because this is a really great thread. But basically to summarize, he talks about how the Mets are potentially having a problem where they are just too late on pitches. And what have we talked about ad nauseum on this podcast the past 3 weeks longer? This team's inability to hit fastballs. And what does that correlate to? Being late on them potentially, or just watching them if you're Brandon Nimmo, which, by the way, again, back to, if we were going to talk about this series, like I said in the post-game show, the last game of this series, even if you want to give them flowers for the offense in the first 4 or 5 innings of the game, they went against a pitcher that doesn't throw a 4-seam. And then what'd they do after? Not get a hit. But either way, with this thread, some of the Mets rankings, this is from the tweet, 29th in attack direction. So this is horizontal pull angle when the ball's hit. 25th in depth in batter's box, so standing up in the box, and 30th in intercept point. How far in front of the batter's how far in front of the batter the bat and ball make contact. Though the Mets have an exceptional rate of quality contact, third both in exit velos, hard hit rate, and barrel rate, which includes launch angle too, they've had in unexceptional results, 13th in WOBA and 16th in runs, already hard hitting and in the air. Is this part of their approach impacting how efficient their quality contact truly is? One thing the Mets do is swing fast. They're 4th in baseball in average bat speed. Even with those fast swings, they're able to make solid contact at around an average rate. Add those together, and when they hit the ball, they hit it well. They're 2nd in baseball in blast per swings. And then I want to get to the main thing about this if I could find it. So here it is. This is the one in the third part of the thread. This is what I wanted to really highlight. That's where it gets weird. If you swing fast, you'll make contact with a pull attack direction, right? Well, yes. If you're any hard swinging team except the Mets, of the 17 hardest swinging teams in average 15 in the screenshot, the Mets are the only one with an oppo attack direction. How many times have we fucking talked about this here? How many times have we talked about this here? Somebody tell me. Whether it's Carson, which, yes, there's no lightning to ride right now, his co-host Andrew, Max, I know you've said in the chat, Ray.
And it's like what Max pointed out right now in this comment. Cedric Mullins first home run as a Met, and not even his first home run was a Met, but all his previous home runs hit this year were pulled. This one, first as a Met, was the first opposite field home run that he hit this year.
How many times have we talked about this? And then he goes on the thread to really highlight guys like Luis Torrens. Really, I mean, Torrens just does not pull the ball at all. If you look at his hit spray chart, which is just absolutely insane. And, he goes on to talk about how it works a bit for Soto and Alonso because their natural power, allows them to hit more to the opposite field and still find their ways to get their home runs. But we've talked about this ad nauseum. And if this thread alone doesn't give you enough of a reason to believe that this is a hitting philosophy issue at the core, then I don't know. I really don't know what to tell you. And it's just unfortunate that, one, the hitting coach hasn't been replaced. And on top of that, it's very unfortunate to hear guys like Mendoza be like, well, we're not making adjustments at the plate. Well, dog, you're the manager, and you could communicate with both the players and the hitting coaches that there's got to be more adjustments up there. And you know what the only adjustment I saw today was when they were doing good offensively earlier in the game, if you want to even say that. I saw them playing small ball. I saw them trying to just hit their singles, get their bloop hits. I saw Brandon Nimmo bunt, which made me want to whip my remote at the TV. It is just, we've talked about this so much. And this is another point as well. The Mets do not protect the plate with 2 strikes. They take pitches that are too close to the strike zone and expect the umps to call what they are out there looking for. Exactly. Like, this is the point. And I'm with you that, like I said earlier in the show, I think Mendoza's seat is warm going into next year. If this is the trend, I don't think it's hot. I think it's warm. But at the very least, bring in your own guys. Hitting coaches and even pitching coaches now, because I've started to have enough with the pitching coaches too. Because I'm not seeing adjustments on that front either. There has to be changes, and Stearns has to bring in his own guys next year before I could really sit here and fully blame Stearns. I think he needs to allocate the payroll elsewhere, which, again, not to fully his fault because he inherited a lot of Billy Epler's dog shit. But at the very least, something has to give. And if that thread alone does not highlight that Eric Chavez has no clue what he's doing, and I had someone reply to me being like, oh, you don't think that the Mets have more in-depth numbers than this and they're not communicating this? Then where the fuck are the results? Then why is there no adjustment up there at the plate? So they could know it, but if you're too stubborn to change it, the hitting coach has to go. It's that simple. If he's too stubborn to change his ways, he has to go. And it's clear that he is. And it's clear, if anything, from today, he's trying to enforce it and double down on it more with the way that they were trying to play small ball earlier in the game. With this type of offense, you're trying to get bloop singles and play small ball? Come on. That's just inexcusable to me.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this how many times this season. Carson's done it as well. I mean, it's just it's getting to a point where it's like it's annoying to talk about because we just keep repeating the same thing over and over and over again. And it's like you see it throughout the whole, not even throughout the whole team, but pretty much the whole organization to the point, and especially when it comes to the young guys, and even I'll get to another point later with this, but I mean, how many times do we see these young guys? They're tearing it up in Double A, tearing it up in Triple A. They're pulling the ball, they're hitting the ball hard, they're hitting the ball in the air, and then they come here, and the offense just dies. We saw with Francisco Alvarez this year, comes up in 2023, or his whole tenure, comes up in 2023, mashing home runs. All we heard about for years when he's coming up to the minor leagues, and when the Mets first signed him out of whatever country they signed him, all we heard was about his raw hitting power and the fact that the guy mashes at the plate. Hits 23 home runs, or hits over 20 home runs in his first year. What does Eric Chavez do? You think that was a good year, Francisco? Because I didn't. The batting average, not high enough. The on-base percentage, not high enough. Cut back on the power. Stop pulling the ball. Stop hitting the ball in the air. Hit the ball to the opposite field. And be a complete hitter. Now, look, like I said before, I have nothing against refining your swing, improving yourself as a player, and making yourself a better hitter. I have no problem with that. But when you're doing that and now telling a player to stop doing what his strength is, and you're coaching him to do what the complete polar opposite of a player he is, that's where I have problems. Because we've seen it with Alvarez. We've seen it with Beatty. He mashes in AAA, comes up here, power, numbers, hitting numbers, zap. Now, look, maybe that's just a case of Brett Beatty's not good enough. Obviously, we have our concerns with Brett Beatty. Whether he's good enough or not, that's not the point. Why can't the Mets get any, long-term and high-end development out of their hitters? Ronnie Mauricio, okay, he's been better, and I know he's still coming off the injury, so there is kind of more of a little bit of leeway I'm giving with him, but still, we haven't seen exactly the type of hitter that we've been expecting out of Ronnie Mauricio. And then, you could look at, other guys throughout this organization as well. Listen, we just saw Carson Bench today, tearing it up in Double A. Got promoted to Triple A today to play with Syracuse. Congratulations to him on that. One step closer to the major leagues. Do I want Carson Bench up here immediately? Absolutely fucking not. Because I know that this asshole is going to fucking change him and affect him in just so many negative ways in terms of hitting approach and how you attack the zone. And I know he's going to, just take a couple steps back as a player. So you look at the our own players internally, and then you look at other players, because again, I brought up on last podcast with the Dodgers bringing in guys like Tommy Edman, fixing their swing and making them better players. Well, prime example today with the Brewers. They picked up Andrew Vaughn this year from the Chicago White Sox. Andrew Vaughn has been an average to below average depth first baseman / outfielder ever since he's come to the major leagues. In his time with the White Sox this year, he was batting 189 with a 218 on-base percentage, 314 slugging for a 531 OPS. The Milwaukee Brewers, they picked him up. And what did they do? What did their hitting lab do? They took him in, made a couple adjustments to his swing and his approach, and now he's batting 353, 418, 647 slug, over 1,000 OPS. Now, look, is Andrew Vaughn going to sustain these numbers long term? No, because I don't think he's an 1,000 OPS player long term. But it's just the point of, why can't the Mets, and I know it's down to Chavez, but it's just, we've seen the evidence over long periods of time with this team where, they can't find these guys, these under the radar guys, and make adjustments, to their swing, to their approach, and then making better hitters, on the cheap end. We've seen them do it with the pitching side this year, and in David Stern's, short time here being as president of baseball operations, but we haven't seen it on the hitting side. And, the ability to do that in terms of the hitting side, it provides so much more value to this team, because, you could find these little replacements here and there for cheap, but instead, we pick up these guys, they end up being garbage like they are elsewhere. And then we, like I said, we see it with the younger guys, have so much hype coming to the minor leagues, come here, their power numbers, their overall hitting approach gets sapped. So, and again, it's just, and again, what Carson mentioned, it's like, why can David Stearns just, and look, maybe he does in the offseason, but why is he not bringing in his own guys, especially in terms of the offensive side, when, again, there's 4+ years of evidence to show that Eric Chavez is not the guy. his method and how he goes about things, and not even how he coaches players, because he doesn't even coach players to begin with. His own players have to go to him and beg for him to actually, do his job, which is just a whole nother disgrace thing on the side. But it's just like, I seriously don't get how this guy hasn't been fired yet. And if he's not fired at the end of this year, then I don't know. That's where I said before. Then there needs to be some uncomfortable, serious conversations about where this team is going in the future.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like the only things that I could really fault Stearns for is both Montas and keeping this hitting coach around. Like, there are little things you could critique him on here and there, and I do sometimes with certain things, but the two main things that you could sit here and seriously say are problematic from Stearns is those two things: is the Montas signing and Chavez still being here. Because I don't understand how I don't understand how you don't bring in your own guys. Because, for all the people that are critiquing and blaming Stearns right now, what do you have to say about the fact that the prospect pool is far better than it ever was under the previous regimes, and these guys are both hitting well and pitching well there? Why is that? Because he brought in his own guys down there to help these guys develop. Isn't it insane how that works? I can't understand. And again, if he doesn't let go of them this offseason, that's where I have a lot of concerns there with Stearns. Because you have Carlos Mendoza openly saying that Chavez and Soto work to make like changes for him or whatever. Like, a guy on track to go to the Hall of Fame, you wanted to change his hitting approach? Come on. That is garbage. Chavez doesn't believe in launch angles, believes in aiming down to create backspin to elevate the ball, which works 1 of 40 times and creates weak ground balls 39 of 40. Swinging late, does that mean, going towards the opposite field? I wonder who preaches minimizing these skills. And you and I both, Carson, and I was saying in 2022, with the way that they're playing offensively, it's not sustainable. And it's only getting more embarrassing the more talent that you're adding to this group, and the more guys are underachieving, and the more prospects that you're missing on. Yeah, and I knew you meant Chavez, which you commented after, but yeah, this is why Matt was saying, don't call these guys up. No point. Chavez is just going to ruin them.
Yeah, that's why again, like, it confuses me when I see people on Twitter talk about the hitting approach, and for some reason they feel like the Mets have an all-out hitting approach, a hitting philosophy. I'm just like, what the fuck are you what are you watching, and what are you talking about in the first place? Because when I watch this team go up every single at bat and be passive on fastballs, trying to draw walks every single time. And listen, there's nothing wrong with walks, right? There's times where you have to be a little bit of passive and look for walks. But when it's every single time, and then you're late on fastballs, you hit ground ball after ground ball after ground ball, you're taking every single ball to the opposite field instead of hitting for power. I think to myself and look at it and analyze the situation. I'm like, how are you watching this and then coming to the conclusion that this team is an all-out home run hitting team, or they're at least trying to hit home runs? Because the math is not adding up here and there. What they're doing right now does not correlate to like what we've been seeing with the Yankees over the past couple of years, where they keep coming in the playoffs because they keep striking out a ton, and they're not hitting, or they're trying to hit home runs, but they're not exactly up to that skill level, and they just keep swinging and missing. I do not see that. And listen, I am no baseball coach. I am no baseball manager. But just for me sitting here and watching these and breaking these things down and analyzing them, I don't understand how anyone can come to that conclusion. I just do not. Everything the Mets are doing wrong now in terms of what's it called? wrong in terms of hitting, it's not because they have a low batting average. It's not because of that. And again, batting average in modern day baseball is overrated. Is it important to a certain extent? Yes, absolutely. But it's not the end all and be all. Everything about baseball now is about getting on base and hitting for power and hitting home runs, hitting extra base hits. Because you can't do any of these rallies that we've seen back in the 80s, back in the 90s, where it's base to base, where it's small ball. You don't win baseball games like that now. It's just it does not happen. You have to. These pitchers are so good now, and there's so much depth in terms of good pitching where you can't do this base to base shit. You have to rely on hitting home runs. You have to rely on hitting balls into the gap and hitting extra base hits and driving in multiple runs. Again, this base to base thing, it's not going to work in modern day baseball. So that for me, I just don't get how people again watch this team and come to that conclusion. And then again, it goes back to the fact that this team cannot hit fastballs. They can't. I've seen it throughout this whole year. There's been long stretches where this team just can't hit fastballs. And sure, look, is there a couple stretches, small stretches here and there where they are able to hit the fastball and they're able to put together some high scoring games? Absolutely, but it does not sustain. I don't care if you do it for one game. And again, I am not preaching. I'm not asking for 15 runs a game. I'm just asking for 6, 7, maybe 8 runs a game where you're giving me quality offense, where you're giving me good at bats, where you're driving up the pitch count high, where you're getting out these top end pitchers out earlier in the games. The Mets don't do this. They do not. And there's been multiple times where I've seen star players in this team struggle to hit the fastball. Notice every time when Francisco Lindor is going through his rough stretches, what's the one pitch that opposing pitchers always go to when they strike him out? Up and in fastball. Why? He's always late on it. And the other reason, he's not sitting on it. Well, who's telling Lindor not to sit on fastballs? It's Eric Chavez. And to look for breaking balls in the dirt and just sit on breaking balls and, look to take balls and look for walks. Even in this series, how many times did Lindor come up in the series with guys with extra, or when there was guys who run scoring position? He had, I believe it was his, I forgot which at bat it was, but I believe it was in the second game where he comes up with bases loaded. He ends up striking out looking on a fastball, which to no one's surprise. And sure, when you look at the on MLB on the MLB app, when you look at the what's it called, the strike zone, the sixth pitch which is the fastball that he struck out on. Yes, the ball, the pitch was a ball, but it was so close to where it's like that's one of those pitches where it's too close to take. Why are you not being aggressive? Why are you not turning on that fastball? And and listen, even if you make hard contact and you hit a hard fly ball and you get out, listen, it's baseball. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes you hit the ball hard and it gets called for an out. It happens a lot every single year. But the fact that I'm looking at these games and looking at these top hitters and they're not even being aggressive on fastballs and they're sitting on breaking balls, again, that tells you everything you need to know, that the message from the hitting coach is completely wrong and they're not going to go anywhere with this hitting philosophy. And that's why we're seeing them go on these long offensive stretches where they just can't hit anything. And again, with Nimmo too.
I need to bring up this comment, or sorry, the one before that, and then that comment as well. First thing, wake me up when the Brewers win the World Series, because the Mets had 101 wins with playing that kind of scrappy baseball where they're trying to, play small ball, get the singles and whatever it is. And you heard Keith say it, like, oh, it reminds me of the 2022 Mets. He said that on the broadcast. So if the Brewers win the World Series this year, I'll gladly entertain this conversation. But to say home runs don't have to be the end-all, be-all, that's complete and utter nonsense. I'm sorry, but ever since 2017, there's one team to not be in the top 10 for home runs. They finished 13th in the league. Name me that team.
Was it the 2019 Nationals?
2019 Nationals, who ended up catching fire towards the end of that season. Outside of that, every single World Series winner from 2017 on, top 10 in home runs. That's just what baseball is now. And I'm sorry if you don't like it. but that's the truth. And when you have guys, you have a player that has a 50 home run season under his belt, consistently a 40 home run bat. When you have a guy that's capable of putting up 40 home runs, consistently should at least give you 35 that you paid $800 million to. And Lindor should be giving you 30. I digress, though. The hitting approach should not be bloop singles for an offense making this much money. So spare me, but the Brewers are doing it. What was the whole point that we talked about when Stearns came here? He would bring some of his knowledge from the Brewers and have more resources to expand on it. Part of that luxury is that he has the financials to get elite talent in this lineup. And these guys should be performing a lot better, but they're being held back. Yeah. If you don't dingers, go watch the Savannah Bananas.
Yeah, and the two main things that I was really excited for when the Mets first brought over David Stearns, it wasn't exactly this small ball hitting approach that I wanted to carry over. The main two things, and one we've seen and it's worked pretty well. The other, not so much this year, but we saw it a lot better last year, was the pitching lab. That has been good so far, even though the pitching has fallen off throughout the second half of the year, and the defense, which, okay, we've seen the defense. It was good last year for large parts. This year's kind of tailed off, but again, when we go into free agency and we see some of the money being freed up with some of these long-term guys like Starling Marte, and you could allocate some of this money smartly to other positions, maybe we'll see the defense take a better step up and approach next season. But that was the two main things that I was excited for. I do not care about this small ball mentality thing. It's about hitting home runs at the end of the day, and like I said, hitting extra base hits, and bringing in multiple runs in terms of one hitting result. And like you said, with the fact that Stearns has more money, with more weaponry, and he's able to implement more of these things, I was more excited, like we were saying, to see more of that hitting approach. And look, maybe if he does bring in his own guys, maybe we do see that approach, because again, we're seeing it with some of these young guys in the minor leagues. Prime example with a guy like Carson Benz. But again, and like what Carson brought, he has to bring in his own guys. I mean, like Carson just commented here, like 15 of our 20 draft picks from 2024 have been good this season. He needs to hire his own guys. It's that simple.
Yeah. It's also that simple that the hitting philosophy is clearly different down in the minor leagues, and you need to be able to maximize these guys' strengths and not have a guy that is so stubborn in his own ways like Chavez is. Because I'm not sitting here and saying you need everyone in your lineup to put up, so many home runs. I'm not saying home runs. I think it's very important, and I think maybe end all be all isn't the right way to put it. But you need your elite talents to be pulling the ball. You could have like the scrappy guys in the bottom of your order type of thing, but you need guys to be playing to their strengths instead of having this garbage where everyone's got to go and try to hit these bloop singles. That's just not how this works. You got to coach to their strengths. I'm not asking again for a lineup to be filled with everyone that's going to hit 20 plus home runs. That's unrealistic. That's never going to happen unless you hit on every draft pick and you're able to save money that way. It's not going to happen. But there is no excuse for a lot of these guys to not be coming through and to not be trying to pull the ball up there.
Yeah. I mean,
and the number one guy is Francisco Alvarez in particular in that department.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, prime example, like you bring up with, the top of the order and then the bottom part of the order, being these scrappy guys who come through with clutch hits. Prime example, You look at the team that just won the World Series last year, the LA Dodgers. Okay, they have their superstars from 1 to 4 in terms of Otani, Betts, Freeman, Teoscar. Even if you want to throw Will Smith into that category, because at the end of the day, he's one of the better catchers in baseball. But look at the bottom of the order. Guys like Tommy Edman, Andy Pajes, um, um, uh, Kike Hernandez, guys like that. Those guys, scrappy hitters, where they're not hitting home runs every single at bat, but they're giving you these clutch home runs here or there. And then when they're not, they're giving you they're giving the other pitchers long at bats where they're chipping them down, they're wearing them down. And that's where you really have that's really where you have a top offense where the top of the order is doing damage. Those are the guys, because again, you're paying them the most money. They're supposed to be doing the most damage and hitting home runs and driving all these guys. But the bottom of the order is where you have these scrappy guys where, okay, sure, they can contribute with with a couple clutch extra bases here or there, or the clutch home run here or there. But those are the guys that are having those hard long at bats where they're fouling off pitch after pitch. They're making the opposing pitcher work, and they're giving the top guys more time and more opportunity to see more of these pitches, to say, okay, here we go. Here's the weak spot with this pitcher. That's where I can go attack them. But again, that's a whole philosophy thing, and we don't see it with this team because Eric Chavez preaches a philosophy that was seen and used in the 1960s.
Yeah, like there wasn't color in the TV when this hitting approach worked. Like I'm sorry if this is a tough conversation for old school baseball fans to understand, but it's the truth. It is just simply the truth that he is stuck in his playing day ways. And it's unfortunate that that's the case, but that is what it is. And I was saying it so much last season. I was saying it in 2022. This guy is stuck in his old ways. And also, again, Carson brings this point up all the time. Who's one of the worst postseason hitters in MLB history? Huh. Kind of strange how that works.
Not a coincidence.
Is just that simple. But again, like I'm so exhausted of the conversation. It's honestly just getting more frustrating the more data that we're getting from Twitter accounts that are able to point out these flaws and identify these issues, instead of the hitting coach actually adapting to today's game. So it's just getting very frustrating to talk about this more and more as we're hearing more of this stuff come out, like I said. But what choice do we have? I mean, this is unfortunately where we are. Brewers also have speed to create bases with their legs as well. Name the so-called speedsters on the Mets right now. Go ahead. Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, if the bottom of the order had that, great. I wouldn't complain. But you can't tell me, you can't tell me Juan Soto should be going up there trying to hit opposite field singles. You just cannot tell me that.
Or laying down bunts.
Or that. Or Brandon Nimmo laying down bunts.
Because even like the point that Carson brought up, like because I know what the thing that the Mets fans are going to do, right? They're going to say, "Oh, well, look at the fact that the Mets are one of the best teams in terms of stealing bases." My rebuttal to that is that's not so much that they're a fast team. That's more the fact that they have maybe one of the better first base coaches in the league in Anthony Richardson, which actually looks for weaknesses in the opposing pitchers and to say, okay, here's where an opposing pitcher struggles in terms of keeping guys close on the base pass. Attack it when they get to this point, and that's where you have a clear run at stealing a base. Which again, funny when you actually have a good coach that actually does his job and coaches the players and makes them better in terms of some of the lesser aspects of their game. They actually improve and become better players. That's kind of funny. It's almost like maybe the hitting coach should do that, but instead he just has his thumb up his ass and is a freaking dugout decoration in the dugout like Carson talks about all the time. Coaches are meant to make players better, and I know that's an obvious statement, but apparently some coaches in this organization don't go to that message. Apparently, it's about just going out there having fun and whatever happens, because Yeah, that's because that's the correct message to have for a team, that has expectations of winning a World Series.
Yeah. I mean, again, we could go in circles with this. All I know is that there's still there's still the remainder of the season to be played. It will pick back up on Tuesday, and they play the Atlanta Braves, which the Braves are probably licking their chops looking at this wounded animal, if you will, or whatever the fuck you want to call the Mets right now. Uh, I didn't want to talk about this tomorrow. We were gonna do this originally Tuesday. I wanted to get this over the way, so over with and out of the way, so I could enjoy tomorrow, so I could not worry about this team until at night on Tuesday. Go ahead and somehow prove us the fuck wrong. That's legit all I could say at this point. I don't expect it to happen. Find a way to prove us wrong.
I don't know. I think they get swept again because, like I
Same.
said, I have no expectations. So, and the Braves kick our ass all the time. So, yeah. Listen, at least I can't get disappointed though because I already laid out that my expectation is they get swept. But hey, like you said, prove us wrong, I guess.
That's legit all we could hope for at this point. And yeah, someone should send Chavez that Twitter thread since he loves reading DMs anyway. So maybe that would actually, what am I saying? It wouldn't get the point across because all he'll say is that, oh yeah, because that guy on Twitter knows just as much as I do. I'll show him. So he'll just double down on his bullshit because that's just the kind of person he is. Just an arrogant fuck who can't take criticism. Just that simple. But thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live. And we'll see you guys in the next one.